Next up is Chelsea Van Pelt. She is a research administrator in the Research Service Corps, and she's going to be going over the NIH Biosketch. Welcome, Chelsea.
Thanks, Jill. Hi, everybody. I will be covering the NIH Biosketch today. I'm currently a supervisor in the Research Service Corps, and I've been with UCSD.
Chelsea, sorry. Okay, next up we have Chelsea with the NIH Biosketch, and she works with me in the Research Service Corps. Welcome, Chelsea.
Thanks, Jill. Hi, everybody. My name is Chelsea Van Pelt. I am currently a supervisor in the Research Service Corps. I have been with UCSD for over 15 years. I've been working in sponsored projects for the entirety of my career here at UCSD. And I have been a research administrator now for 12 plus years. So lots of experience working with PIs on Biosketches, and then eventually we'll cover other support. And so there's lots of experience there too. So let's get into it. So the NIH Biosketch. What is the purpose of a Biosketch? So Biosketch really enables reviewers to evaluate the highlighted qualifications of the PI and key personnel that will be executing. So they have a specific role on the proposed project. So anytime the PI wants to name somebody on their grant application, they will need to submit a Biosketch, and they are considered what we call key personnel. What does the Biosketch allow? Well, it allows the applicants to describe the magnitude and significance of their scientific contributions, so including their publications. So it's really a time for them to essentially sell themselves to NIH and why they're qualified to do the project. And it provides detailed information about their research experience in the context of the proposed project. So why are they qualified to execute this project? Who must complete a Biosketch? All senior key personnel and other significant contributors that are listed on the grant application. So like I mentioned previously, anytime a PI wants to name somebody on their application, they need to include a Biosketch. What do NIH reviewers look at? Well, the first thing they look at is the PI qualified to do the job. Does the personal statement reflect that they have enough experience to execute the project? So this is why Section A of their Biosketch is very important and must always be modified by the PI, and they need to essentially explain what makes them qualified to execute this project. Does the PI have a peer-reviewed publications relevant to the proposal? And remember, format and layout always matter. Think of yourself in the reviewer's hands and think of if you were on their side looking at this Biosketch, does it make sense? Is it formatted correctly? Is it in the correct layout? Is everything flow? So always kind of put yourself in their shoes when you're thinking of these things and when you're reviewing a Biosketch after the PI has sent it to you, or if you're even putting it together and trying to organize everything. Always try to check for that because this is very important. And always be consistent. So is the Biosketch consistent with other parts of the application? So that's always very important. Because we want to make sure that the things that are included in the Biosketch are also the things that are included in the other parts of the application. And this is also, I want to point out here as well, this is why, because NIH reviewers look at the Biosketch and they look for these types of things, this is why it's always important to never recycle the same Biosketch for different proposals. Because that statement, that personal statement could be relevant to one project, but maybe not the other. So you always want to check with the PI for each application to make sure that all those, the publications that are included, the personal statement, all of that is relevant to the project in which they're applying for. All right, so what are the main sections of the Biosketch? The header, So in the header, we include the name, the ERA Commons ID, and their position, education, and training. This is where all this information is listed. Section A is the personal statement. Section B is positions and honors. Section C is contributions to science. And Section D is research support and/or scholastic performances. So what does an NIH Biosketch form look like? So here's an example. And as you can see, the things that we always want to check for is the NIH header okay? Is our Biosketch form relevant or has it expired? So always make sure that the date is still current. And you can see right there, we have the correct form version because it will expire in 2/28/2023. And then always note the page limit, so 5 pages. This is very important. A lot of times when we go to PDF a document or when we go to put everything together, it can sometimes exceed that 5-page limit. So you always want to reach out to the PI if you're in this situation and have them condense some information, maybe remove some irrelevant information to condense it down to 5 pages. It's okay if it's under 5 pages, but it cannot exceed 5 pages. Always be sure to include the ERA Commons ID. When you're filling out your application in Assist, this ID is very important because this will pre-populate the PI's information. So having it here as well is always very important. And make sure that education is listed oldest to newest. And when you're filling out the, for fund managers, when you're filling out the senior key personnel profile in Assist, this is a good way too to find out their highest degree earned in the year, and then you can complete those fields also. So in this case, I would list PhD for their degree and 1996 for the year earned in the Assist application. Personal statement, Section A. So this is always the PI's responsibility. Like I mentioned earlier, this is a time for them to really sell themselves. So this makes them stand out to NIH when they're reviewing their application. Why are they qualified to do this research project? So this should always be reviewed and completed by the PI for every application. So customize the personal statement for each grant, like I mentioned, and then the name of the grant proposal and speak to the funding mechanism. And it should be relevant to each application, like I mentioned, and emphasize, why they are in a leadership role to execute this, their expertise in this field, and if they are going to be, if this is a fellowship being submitted and they're going to be a mentor, why do they have experience to be a mentor for this fellow that's applying? And explain any factors affecting productivity. And again, they can use up to 4 publications to highlight their experience. And please note that they cannot exceed 4 publications. So 4 is the max. Next up is Section B, and this is their positions and honors. And this is always, again, completed by the PI. List in chronological order and conclude with the most current position. So here you can see that we left the end date open because their current position is, in this case, an associate professor in the Department of Psychology. And always list everything in chronological order going down. And be sure to include any foreign affiliation appointments. So if the faculty member has an appointment at another university or at another foreign institution, this is always very important to list so we can have full disclosure with NIH. So under positions and employment, like I mentioned, if they hold a joint appointment with a foreign entity, that needs to be included in Section B under positions and employment. And this includes titled academic, professional, or institutional appointments, whether or not they are receiving salary, and whether or not they are full-time, part-time, voluntary, it doesn't matter. It needs to be listed so we can maintain full disclosure with NIH. Section C, contributions to science. They can list up to 5 contributions, and this would include historical background, central findings, influence of the finding on the progress of science and how it applies, and a specific role in the described work. Description of each contribution should be no longer than a half a page, including citations. And they can only cite up to 4 publications per each contribution. This is a very common mistake that I see on most faculty's biosketches, is generally they will list more than 4. So always be sure to review this and make sure they only have 4. If they exceed their limit, then reach out to them and find out which one that they would want to eliminate. Make sure the PMC ID number is listed. And then this is optional, but they can include a URL to their My Bibliography. Section D, research support. List ongoing research support first, the project name and the title of the grant. List the project and the grant number. And after the PI name, put PI in parentheses. If they are a co-investigator, you would put co-investigator in parentheses. And you would list the project dates, not the budget dates. And then their role underneath would be PDPI, co-investigator, whatever the role is on the project. And then the major goal. This is usually a 1 or 2 sentence description of the project, and this information is always provided by the PI. And be sure to list any foreign support if that's applicable. And then next up is completed research support, and you are going to list any research grants that have ended within the last 3 years. If they ended over 3 years ago, you can remove them from their biosketch. Do not include the number of person months or direct costs in Section D of the biosketch. How to read an NIH grant number or application ID. So the application type, the activity code, the institute code, serial number, and support year, and other suffixes help us to determine what kind of funding mechanism we have, which agency is funding us, and then the serial number identifies that specific grant. So the application type, the activity code, institute code, serial number, support year, and the other suffixes. So how do we read an NIH grant number? So the application type tells us what type of application it is. Is it a new, is it a competing continuation, a supplement, an extension, a non-competing continuation, a change of institution, a change of grantee, a change of institute or division, and a change of institute or division for competing and non-competing. So based on the number, this will tell us what those are. The activity code is a 3-digit code identifying a specific category or activity. So in like an example, an R01, T32, R44, just depends on what type of activity this is. The administrating organization code is a 2-letter code identifying the primary NIH institute. So this will tell me what type of agency within NIH that this grant is through. So in the example above, CA would refer to the National Cancer Institute. The serial number is a 6-digit number generally assigned sequentially to a series within an NIH institute or center. So this number is unique to the grant. And then the suffixes is the grant year. The 2-digit number indicates the segment in the budget period of a project. The supplement could also be, if you see a letter S, this could indicate that there's a supplement, so S1, S2. An amendment, the letter A and related number identify each amended application. So A1 would be a resubmission. How do you find Biosketch info? So the PI, like I mentioned, always provides the personal statement and the main contributions to science, publications, education, positions, etc. Research support. So there's a few different options we have here. We can look in financial link. We can go to OPAC. They have an award document lookup where we can pull relevant copies of the NOA. We can also go to NIH Reporter or ERA Commons and pull copies of notices of awards or previously submitted applications. And then NSF has their own award search. So there's a couple different places where we can find this information. NIH Reporter, if you go to NIH Reporter's website, you could type in the PI's last name and their first name and their organization. So here we have the PI's last name, Smith, and then we would type in UCSD. Make sure you have active projects selected. And when you do that, you're going to get to this screen. You always want to click on the most recent grant number that pops up. So in this case, the 05. And then you're going to click on that. And then you're going to have all the information. You're going to go to the Details tab, and you're going to have the information that you need in order to complete that Section D. You can see here I have the project number. Here's the title, the PI's name, and then the start and the end date. So I have all the information right here in order to generate Section D. The only thing that I would need for each section is the major goals, and like I said, that would be the information you would get from the PI. So how are fellowships different in Section D? So fellowships, when fellows are applying for grants, they may not have any research funding. So what they're going to do is we can skip this section, or they can complete scholastic performance. And this is what it would look like. They would list the courses with titles and grades. If these applicants also have research support, they may complete both sections. So what are some key points to remember on NIH Biosketches? Format does matter. Like I said before, think of yourself as a reviewer, and what would you look for? Anything that's clearly organized, well written, and formatted correctly is always going to be more favorable. Always make sure you have the correct form. So always look at the header and the form versions and make sure you're using an up-to-date form. The amount of publications, like I mentioned before, this is a common mistake that I see a lot where they have more publications listed. So make sure that they're using the amount that they are limited to. Expired research support dates. Make sure you're reviewing Section D, and if you see anything that's expired on there, check with the PI. Maybe it went into a no-cost extension. If so, we need to adjust the dates, or if it's truly ended, then we need to remove that grant listed there and move it to the completed section. Refer to your checklist and guide for a refresher. So always look at the instructions on NIH's website and make sure that you are using the most up-to-date form and instructions, because these things change. So always make sure that you have the correct instructions and make sure that nothing's changed since you last completed the BioSketch last time.